Talk Law with your favorite lawyers from around the interwebs, discussing the most pressing of topics every Friday at noon Eastern Time.
Well, this time it worked, and we didn't have David talking over the intro.
They muted me.
It's supposed to mute you. That's the weird part, is when StreamYard does wonky things like that, you do it, there's an intro, and it mutes everybody, and that's handy, especially if you're running an ad and have a talkative co-host.
Mm-hmm. What most people don't know is you can actually unmute yourself during those videos. But most people don't know that.
You can, but most people don't do it.
Now I know. Thank you. No one will silence me.
Oh, God help us. God help us. All right. Well, we have a short time with the Viva Frei, so I'm trying to figure out what is the best story to start with. And I kind of feel like it should be the Zuckerberg letter.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm actually curious to know what the other legal minds think of this. Ian Coleman.
Yes.
Now hold on. Legal Law Life. I forget your first name now.
David.
Oh, that's going to be easy enough. A lot of people were saying like this is going to be his coming clean moment, but as far as I'm concerned, this facilitated and strengthened a lot of the lawsuits against Facebook for censorship, specifically RFK Jr.'s.
Right.
So why do you do it? Why do you do it?
That's why it's so confusing. That's why I brought it up, because did he not open himself up? I know House and Habit is now suing Facebook and has joined the case. Other people
this is my thought. He, like reading the tea leaves, he thinks Trump's going to win, and he's coming on his knees, hat in hand, saying, "Please don't, work. Or please continue to work with us," and things like that. My understanding is that originally his concern was getting the U.S. government support and some overseas data sharing and things like that, and wanted to maintain that. And so that's why he sort of bent over for the U.S. government. So he says, or so the rumor mill is. Now, if there's going to be a new commander in chief, he wants to come in, groveling and that sort of thing. I think this is a good sign that Trump's going to win.
I actually agree with David. I think actually that this is a situation where, a lot of the billionaires, a lot of the social media platforms are seeing that the route with Donald Trump is going to be better for them. I think Donald Trump is going to give them what they want. Donald Trump's connections with Peter Thiel and JD Vance and all those people, it's going to be, a lot more technologically better for them. So I think this is just him just throwing out a card that he can do right now, going to the committee, the Republican committee there, and just saying, hey, here's a letter admitting this. I'm happy to work with Donald Trump if he gets elected. That's my perspective.
That's pretty optimistic.
Yeah.
The problem is I don't have a conspiracy theory to rebut it. I don't see the creepy angle. I mean, I think some people have speculated, they're trying to make us think that they're really gonna behave now, but they think that we know that they know that we know that I don't go for that kind of stuff. That doesn't make sense to me.
I'm trying to figure out a way. The timing with the arrest of Pavel Durov is interesting, but I don't see how this would make him any less of a target for international reprisals. If now he's saying, I'm not going to bow to the government pressure, then they might say, well, you damn well better. Otherwise, we'll arrest you like Pavel. Or he's, I think
David, don't trust his words. This is just a mere letter.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is he's basically saying, I was just following orders back then, but a month ago he was censoring the iconic photo of Trump after he got the assassination attempt, on the basis that it was, a doctored image. So even, the recent past, he's come to that revelation, and yet recently was censoring a photo that ought to have gone viral.
David, so he's more than bent over. $400 million in Zuckbucks. Yeah. Come on. This guy is not only cooperating, but he paid to get them in out of his pocket.
Is he signaling potentially to people that if Trump gets elected, he's not going to cooperate with the Trump administration? Maybe. I don't know. The letter is weird. I just think he's groveling.
But that's an expensive grovel. And I think that's where Ron's coming from and why I asked it. It's like, I get it, but there's 100 ways you could grovel without explicitly stating that. Like, for example, you could say that the government from time to time, whatever, or why now? He's responding to a letter that was written, I think, in April or March from Jim Jordan. And then it's like all of a sudden he gets this crisis of conscience and says, oh, you know what? It's 100% right. So that has to help Missouri v. Biden. It has to help all these cases because he literally said that he was acting as a government agent. Or am I misinterpreting what he wrote in that letter?
You know what else was interesting? I just want to add this one thing. He prefaces it like the first paragraph. He's talking about we've turned over tons of documents to you and da 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 da. Maybe there's something going on behind the scenes that he's responding to that we don't necessarily privy to.
I'm sure that there probably is. But again, is he going to profit that much more by Trump being elected than the massive penalties or fines or, judgments that could be ruled against them?
That's strikingly. I think after you mentioned Missouri versus Biden,
yeah,
that didn't happen, right? Whatever's going to happen has got to be started fresh.
Okay,
and between that, the development of the Supreme Court dropping that case and all the companion cases, including my case against on behalf of Rogan O'Handley, which was just there was a whole stable of those cases saying, hey, the government censored and they all went to hell. Everyone's got to start fresh. That's kind of a reset opportunity, arguably, for Facebook, Meta. I think that Viva made an important point. Putting this in the context of the international squeeze on platforms. Remember, WhatsApp is a competitor of Telegram, and Telegram. It's not a particularly popular solution, although it probably would have been a better idea for some of the people who used it because it's actually end-to-end encrypted in every message. Unlike
hold on, it is a very popular. WhatsApp is the #1 tool in the world with over 6 billion.
Everyone, I'm talking in terms of security-minded people, as opposed. In other words, in the third world.
Signal is the winner on that.
Holy crap!
Everyone goes to Signal.
WhatsApp has 2.78 billion unique users as of 2024. Yes. That's wild. I don't use WhatsApp.
Well, WhatsApp's used all around the world.
That's exactly my point. Is that cool guys like Viva with like all this hair? They're not going to be on WhatsApp. Baldies and foreigners, yes. Oh, Viva, you're kind of a foreigner still, but
he's trying.
It's interesting. I don't believe him, and I think he's doing it for whatever self-interested reasons.
Yeah, he is definitely not coming to Jesus. I think we can say that.
And he's saying we were coerced in 2020 while they were just doing it recently, and apparently people are saying he just donated millions as well recently to. I don't know. Maybe it's he sees a whistleblower coming with criminal election interference, and he's saying we were just following orders before this whistleblower comes out. Is the only beneficial angle I can see, because he also, I'm reading that letter. Nothing was new in that letter. We all knew everything in that letter.
He admitted to such in Joe Rogan's.
He just confirmed to the general, the general consensus is, they're doing that. Everybody knows they're doing that. He just kind of confirmed what most people have been saying on both sides of the aisle, I think.
Maybe he's just tired of it. Maybe he's just tired of the government pressure and them influencing his thing and demanding and becoming increasingly problematic. Maybe he's just tired of it.
Well, that does fit in with the idea that there's a reset after the Supreme Court decision. That he'd like to clear the decks, and I also do think it's possible that even without reading tea leaves about the election, because I don't think his information about the election is all that much better than ours. He might have access to some of the Democrat internals that are probably telling a more accurate story than the push polls, but. It does make sense, I think, for him to realize that regardless of the outcome of the election, there's a different mood in the country. X has changed the game. X has changed the game in terms of censorship. And, Viva, you guys, you Rumble guys, you're very cognizant of the fact that there's a great deal of unrest in the world of streaming and the world of video content. YouTube's story is not yet written. It's still by far the dominant and the superior video platform. There's a lot of unhappiness. There are changes. There are going to be more changes. Google just got hit with antitrust. Remember? No, not related to YouTube, but it's a whole new ballgame. So,
Ron, I got to push back on the antitrust thing though. I interviewed Robert Epstein. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him.
Yes,
He's
I do know Robert.
major luminary. He pointed something out that totally blackpilled me on the whole antitrust situation. He asked me the one question. He said, who do you think asked for the DOJ to go after Alphabet for antitrust? Google. They asked for it themselves because Epstein and others were going after them for content and things like that. I forgot the exact terminology used, but safety and things of that sort, which are far more dangerous versus getting Google and antitrust. What are you going to do about it? They're a search engine. You can't break up a search engine. You can say, "Oh, we'll spin off Android." Okay,
hold on a second though. The search engine was found not to be an antitrust problem. The antitrust problem was with advertising, not with search. I mean, listen, whatever Epstein has to say, I take very seriously. But that might be a little bit of an oversimplification of it. Regardless, and by the way, you're 100% right. Do these guys play? Do they play the antitrust? Enforcers? Is everything an op in some respect? That is true, but I don't think it's welcomed by any of the big tech companies like Facebook. The idea that there's going to be a degree of scrutiny and regulatory involvement that didn't exist before. Well,
of course, it's not ideal. But then, when you're facing the gun of them going after on real policy violations and things like that, you go, oh well, if you go after a monopoly, and then they go after that, and there's again, you're right, advertising, whatever. What are you going to do about it? I mean, seriously, how can you enforce that, Kurt?
You can spin off a lot of things. I mean, Google, Alphabet, you're talking about the search engine, you're talking about Google Ads, you're talking about YouTube, you're talking about Android.
But they already are spinning it off, right? I mean, technically, Alphabet is the umbrella, and then they have all these little subsidiaries underneath.
That's not what spin-off means. I mean, it would be a completely separate, wholly owned company.
But that's where, I always think the solution is illusory, because it doesn't matter if Google or Alphabet, YouTube, and Google are separate companies. I mean, they don't have to be common shareholders in order to know how to work in concert to achieve the goals they want. So I've always said, the idea that because they have some shared corporate shareholding of a mother company, it's irrelevant. Separate the companies; they'll still work together in the exact same way Twitter was working with the DOJ to censor social media. They don't,
and they may even make more money, for sure.
They're definitely going to make more money. That's the thing that people don't. When you bust up trusts or monopolies, the shareholders make a ton more money, and they're grateful for it at the end of the day.
They always are going to make money.
My ultimate feeling about the Zuckerberg letter, why he's saying what everyone already knew. So there's nothing new, nothing revelatory there. I genuinely think the selfish interest here is he sees the adulation that Elon Musk is getting on an international scale, and he's jealous because everyone is looking at Zuck like he's a loser scoundrel, and Elon like he's a hero, and he wants in on that hero ship. And so I think
what an impact!
His personal ego,
incredible impact by Musk. To have a cultural impact like that.
Yeah.
All because he offered to fight him in an MMA fight.
Well, no, but I can very easily see Zuckerberg being the guy that wants to tell Thierry Fleury of the European Union to go fuck himself. Like, hey, why can't I do that? Oh, because you are the uncool loser now in the tech world, and nobody likes you. People love Peter Thiel. He's up on Joe Rogan. People love Elon Musk, and Zuck is on the outs of the cool kids in the tech world, and I don't think he likes it.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a major friend of Bill Gates. They're very similar in that regard. I mean, no, if you look at comparisons, Elon Musk is like Steve Jobs to Bill Gates with Zuckerberg. You can almost, track the different personalities on that. Steve Jobs is always the cooler kid, and Bill Gates is always trying to be. I think
whatever's motivating him, he's doing something that is good, and so I'm going to praise him for it because that's a good thing to do.
Oh, you're such a sap, Kurt.
I think he's a scumbag. I think he's a scumbag, and when a scumbag
you never want to punish someone when they're doing the right thing.
That's true.
It's always good.
I won't punish him. I'm going to say that there's a self-interested reason to this, and
but that's fine though. I mean, everybody has a self-interest, technically.
Well, I guess benevolence is a self-interest as well. Like, you want to come clean to cleanse your soul, but I think there's a sinister reason for which he's doing this. I just haven't quite figured it out yet.
Well, I've got a question on that. I mean, because I try to be optimistic. There's a lot of purists out there, and that drives me a little bit crazy. For example, if somebody is coming to your side and they have been an enemy forever, at what point do you say, you know what? Okay, thank you. I'm glad you see the light, and bring them in? Or are you just going to forever punish them and say, no, screw you. The door's forever closed to you. We will never take your support. We'll just make sure to push away that support that you're offering.
It depends what type of enemy they were. An ideological adversary is different than a scoundrel. So it's someone who says, I didn't play dirty, I didn't lie, I didn't cheat, I didn't steal, but we always disagreed, is different than someone who always cheated, always lied, always steal. I will never welcome them because I could never trust them not to cheat and steal against me, even if we ally, which is why I think you can never trust a Zuckerberg ever. But someone who I'm trying to think like a Tulsi Gabbard, who you might not have agreed with ideologically, who comes on board, you don't have to worry about her stabbing you in the back quite as much.
I'll take the Reagan quote in this. Trust but verify.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I agree with you, Eric. Actions speak louder than words if we're going to start talking about statements here. I don't believe Zuckerberg for a second. We could argue about the self-interest, the rebranding, whatever it's going to be, but there's going to be more and more censorship, not only in the Facebook platform, but on the Google platform, but on the X platform, dare I say it. So this is just a situation where we don't know the exact motives, but I got to tell you that we're going to find out in a week or two that something's been censored with respect to Facebook.
Of course.
And Zuck's going to be right back in the same situation.
It's happening on X too, by the way.
I agree.
X is censoring all the damn time. The community guidelines are not that different than what they were before. That's part of Elon Musk's gripe to advertisers. It's like, whoa, hold on. We're stamping down hate speech. We're doing this. We're doing that. Why aren't you advertising on the platform? So, it's bullshit. Yes, he let a few, Nick Fuentes on the platform and Alex Jones famously, but that doesn't mean that X isn't censoring. X is censoring far more than Rumble, for example.
Yeah, censorship's gone up on X, actually.
Has it?
Compared to what?
Well, what they do is they control the speech by deboosting. And also they do a thing, you've probably done this before, where you've clicked like on a post or something, and then it disappears real quickly after that. This is something that we're seeing uniquely with X, as opposed to even YouTube or Instagram. We're starting to see, they talked about freedom of speech is not freedom of reach.
Yep.
And that's what Linda Yaccarino talked about. And all I'm trying to say is there's a big push. And again, I don't want to push back. I mean, I guess it's the best platform we have right now. Sure. But I want to say there's a big push to let us know that we have free speech on X. But if you actually, I have lists of people that I follow, and depending upon the subject matter of the list, there's a remarkable amount of deboosts that are going on X, just as other platforms. And you got to understand, there's a lot of pressure on the social media platforms internationally. I think sometimes we're myopic. We just think about America and but there's so many other users out there.
Well, what's going on in Brazil? I mean, this is
exactly.
This is mind-boggling.
Yeah, I think Elon has picked a fight a little bit way back when, and then he has to relent over time. And then they talk about closing their field office in X, and then you start seeing deboosting of Brazilian posts. So it goes back to what Eric said. You got to trust but verify, and you got to the actions. You got to analyze the actions. And I'm not seeing a remarkably different treatment on X than on other social media platforms right now.
It is a little more transparent. That I'm going to give it, because he did release a source code, and people can actually see.
Yeah, but that's only the front end source code. See, this is something that people don't understand. Yes, he released the source code, but that's only front end. You can't see what words are banned. You can't see what political topics are downgraded. It's wonderful that he gave us that kind of little gift. But if you really analyze that code, you're not going to see exactly what's happening behind the scenes. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Bon. Go ahead. I jumped in.
Oh,
I think I interrupted you. You were starting.
Oh, me? Yeah, but I'm always talking, so that doesn't prove anything.
You got Nate's in the house. What's up, Nate?
Hey, Nate.
Nate, how you doing?
He looks like he's muted.
He's muted, but Nate actually released a video on the whole Zuckerberg.
Yeah, I'm muted. Sorry.
Coming clean, and actually on my new channel, which I'm going to pimp in this episode, Proven Conspiracies, I released a video on Zuckerberg, Twitter files, Bobby Kennedy Jr., how all three of these are proving what I'm deeming social media mockingbird.
Social media mockingbird. All right.
So if anybody wants to check that one out, it was actually Nate's idea. He's like, "You've got this new channel. It's proven conspiracies. You know what this is with Zuckerberg? It's a proven conspiracy." I was like, "Oh,
It is a proven conspiracy. The question is why he's just coming out with it now. Does anyone see a new case filing as a result of this? Given the
House and Habit filed. I don't know if literally yesterday or the day before.
Oh, really? Okay. When did this letter come out? I don't remember the date.
Tuesday.
Okay. All right. The 26th. All right. Yeah. So 4 days to get a lawsuit together. They filed yesterday. Okay. It'll be interesting to see how that goes and where it goes.
Yeah, I have no idea. What are your thoughts, Nate? Is it a crisis of conscience, or people are speculating on here that perhaps Zuckerberg sees Trump winning and he's trying to get on the good side ahead of time? Do you think that it was a wise move to write that letter?
I think business-wise, yes, because I think there's been a groundswell, because I think Elon's issue is numbers. Like, he has the numbers, but he doesn't have the advertisers. And I think Facebook has the exact opposite issue. It has the advertisers, but not the numbers. So I think this is if just as a thing on the business, you would think that if I can get more of those numbers, because obviously people are looking at that free speech type thing, if I can get more of those people to come over, knowing that now I'm on the other side of this, maybe I can have both. And I'm thinking that it could be a little bit of a play for that too, because now that's what he's talking about, right? I'm not doing any of that. I'm not giving it to the Democrats. I'm not doing it. So he's really kind of moved his direction a little bit more toward Elon, but obviously he's got to still keep those advertisers. So I think he's trying to have the best of both worlds.
Well, he has been doing that, like what is it, riding a surfboard with a giant American flag and stuff. So he's been working on his image. I wouldn't be surprised if he has consultants.
I was going to say he's got an image consultant for that.
Oh, yeah.
But the other thing is it going to be secret, non-free speech, pretending as free speech? I guess similar to X, where you could say whatever you want. We're not going to censor it. We're not going to put fact checking and all this stuff in there, but it's just not going to be boosted and nobody's going to see it.
I want to, Ron, you brought up something earlier, and I meant to answer, but you said that Elon must probably, actually, Elon and Zuckerberg probably do have the access. You said Zuckerberg probably doesn't have any more access to what's really going on behind the scenes with the election than all of us. I think he actually does. He has about 2 billion users on Facebook, and Facebook is maybe one of the best polls in the world because it's like family and friends. And I bet you that internally they have the algorithms that can measure sentiment of what is going on in the pulse of the country right now for the election. I wouldn't put it past him with having better information than just about anybody else out there, because he can, get this sense of the vibe or the zeitgeist right now.
That's interesting. I mean, it's entirely speculative,
of course,
but it's quite a reasonable speculation. I mean, you would think that would be an incredibly valuable tool, but yes, I mean, Facebook is a data mining operation, right?
Oh, for ads, yes.
I'll drop with this thought because I got to get ready for my stream. But Children's Health Defense lawsuit against Biden was reinstated, where they determined that Children's Health had standing. Zuckerberg writes this letter that says they pressured me, but we decided, we felt bad for having done it, but there was pressure. Robert F. Kennedy and Children's Health Defense obviously uses that letter to go after the Biden regime and say, look, here's the evidence of you coercing them. And then if he gets a favorable ruling, well, then Zuckerberg gets to say, oh, I didn't know that legally speaking, that was coercion. So we're off the hook for any censorship that we did, because now Biden has been found to have coerced a social media company into censoring on behalf of the government. And he sort of preemptively washes his hands by giving the Children's Health Defense or a censorship argument against Biden the strongest chance to survive. I figured
I don't know if that works.
I don't think it works either, because you're going to end up suing Facebook just as well.
I mean, he's the problem with it is to the degree to which he's working with the government actually exposes him as a governmental actor unto himself.
But does he get immunity?
No, not necessarily, but I still think you can make a valid 1983 claim against Facebook because of their entanglement with the government, that they're a governmental actor and they're now using color of law to deprive someone of their civil rights. It's been done before. So it's like, yeah, you
but
have
Kurt,
constitutional arguments now.
He's claiming there was pressure on them from the government, that they were being coerced, that they were under duress in cooperating. This is not a situation where it appears to be, at least with respect to his letter, that there is an
I don't know that matters either
agreement.
here nor there.
Gentlemen,
Like,
I'm ducking out.
I don't know that matters
Have a
here
good
nor there.
afternoon.
If
Thank you.
you know, if a police officer, you know, found some guy and put pressure on them in a way to make them a governmental actor and made them do things that the police can't do, I still think it's a Fourth Amendment violation or whatever the violation is in question.
Certainly a Fourth Amendment violation.
The government can't coerce, instill, confederate with someone and not make them a governmental actor. That's a problem.
But Kurt, I think
the question is whether or not there's a cause of action against the actor that was coerced.
the guy who in your scenario, the police put pressure on that guy. Could you then sue that guy if you know he's been coerced?
Sure.
See, I think the liability.
I'm certainly make a go of it.
Yeah,
if he wants to make the affirmative defense of duress, you know, good luck, I guess.
But no,
There
you
was
put it in your hypothetical. In your hypothetical, you said he was duressed under. So we're saying yes, okay. If that's true, then legally he wouldn't be responsible because that's the argument, right?
There's an analog case out of Michigan where local township had hired private contractors to do a bunch of like surveilling of some junkyard and stuff like that.
Yep.
But I think the township was ultimately responsible, not the private company. So I think it just goes back to the primary, not the agent at that point.
I think.
Well, it would obviously
can
depend on
get-
the details as developed, but yes, it's quite possible. But you still have the underlying cause of action, and then who you get to at the end of the day, who knows?
Yeah,
So
I think
I'm small-minded.
I do think Kurt. Well, I do agree with Kurt in the sense of I think you could get to the actor if they were willingly doing this on behalf, like if they had some type of agreement or something, then you've made yourself into a government actor versus the coercive piece of it. And I think that's the part you'd have to get over if you're a plaintiff.
So is the argument, because I'm not legally minded, is the argument similar to if there's two cars parked behind each other at a light? There's a car in the front, car in the middle, and then somebody rams into the car behind, and then that car rams into the first car. Is that the claim? Is that Facebook is that second car? They're saying, hey, you know, we're doing our thing, but then this other car rammed into us and that caused us to violate. Would that be the defense, or is that a terrible analogy?
It's not a terrible analogy. In other words, they're claiming we didn't really have a choice. We were coerced. We were coerced.
Well, think of it more like an employee situation, right? Say a company's got a contract to go do X, Y, and Z. The employee is out there doing X and Y, but is told specifically by the employee, forget about Z, and leaves the job. You know, the employee is just acting on behalf of the direction from the employer, and the employer is ultimately responsible. I think that might be a better analogy.
But then if you know that you're breaking the law, aren't you ultimately responsible, even if it's company policy? Isn't it your duty to not break the law? I thought there was still some responsibility. You know, like if your company is defrauding people and this is the company internal policy, but you know it is fraud, can you literally say, oh, you know, hey, just following orders here?
There's no absolutes though, right? It all depends on their level of coercion, you know, that type of thing. Because the more coercion, then Eric, but generally, go ahead.
Eric, the metaphor it loses a little when you go to a recognized crime. Take a step back. We're talking about can the government do X? Can the government censor speech? Answer: no. Can a private party censor speech? Yes. Okay. When can a government outsource censorship to a private party? That's when we're measuring the coercion or the cooperation, right? It's one or the other. Can't be both. In the case of theft or fraud, no one's allowed to defraud anyone. So we're not it's true that you can't generally get out of committing a violent act or an illegal act by saying someone made me do it, but sometimes you can.
Yeah,
sometimes you can.
Hey guys, I gotta run. Thanks, Eric, for having me on. Take care, everybody.
See you, Dave.
But I will also say this: in the letter that Zuckerberg wrote, I think now thinking about it, I think Kurt may have a play there, because he did say inevitably it was our decision whether to take it down or not, essentially removing that coercive part of it, because he said, hey, you know, even though we didn't agree, but at the end of the day it was our own and we chose to do it or not to do it. So I think that then it makes it a little bit more messy, because now you can say, well, even though they pressured you, you still at the end of the day said, hey, we decided to do what we didn't do. And then you could point to examples where they said do X and you said you chose not to do X. So I think it's a little more messy. It's not as clean as we'd all like the law to always be, right? It's
Okay, well, I've got another story. Oh, hold on, I'm getting a super chat. Thank you.
Oh.
The Chugi Show live. If my fellow Christians don't stop spurging about Trump and his abortion stance, they may cost us the election. Many posts saying they may not vote at all. Don't think it's quite topical, but thank you very much for the super chat. I wanted to talk about this story because there is actually, I think, a couple stories related. Foo Fighters is also bitching a little bit too. And I think this comes up like every election cycle. It's like, they can't use my music. Now, I think the Foo Fighters had their music offered via a licensing agency. And like, we could use if we go pay for the license or whatever, like stock footage or what have you, stock photography, stock music. A lot of us use this stuff. They really don't have a claim if somebody licenses their music and they use it at an event that they may not support. Would that be a fair statement?
It's under
Correct.
the conditions of the license. I mean, if they offer as a license, and then it's like, what does the license say? What does it not say? That's
because I have a couple of those licenses for my videos, and like other people can use it, but it all depends. Like if Trump started, then I would have to, number one, put them on notice. I don't want to, like, there's a process to go through if my stuff is on something I don't want it to go through.
But, I wanted to bring up that point. I think this is just more of a branding play on behalf of the Foo Fighters. I mean, first of all, there's definite separation between the actual artists and their business functions. So oftentimes artists don't even know what the hell's being licensed and what's not. They're getting checks here and there.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then the other thing is, with all due respect, Foo Fighters are one of my favorite bands, but they're captured. I mean, what do you expect them to say when someone who has a lot of followers tweets Foo Fighters and says, did you allow Donald Trump to use your theme? I mean, do you think they're going to say, yes, it was properly licensed and we hate Trump, but yeah, he used it? No, they're always going to respond, as you saw in that tweet, or actually, I'm sorry, in that post, no, N-O, no explanation, nothing else. They had to respond that way because they're beholden to their interests, their producers who are all in bed with the left. So, I mean, I didn't really draw much from that. I'm sure Donald Trump properly licensed that song. When I heard that song, when RFK walked on stage, I was like, whoa, I hope their lawyers have done their due diligence. And I think they have, because it's such a big anthem, especially in the circles that we're used to. We're not used to hearing Foo Fighters music in a Republican speech type context. So I think Donald Trump covered his bases on this one. That's my guess.
But hold on now. I want to shift to this one though, because this is a second one. This is Jack White bitching about a clip of his song being used by a Trump campaign manager or somebody in a tweet. So Margot Martin said, President Donald Trump departs for Michigan and Wisconsin and used part of Jack White's song on, along with this tweet, which, by the way, we do all the time. I mean, how many songs are used in memes and whatever else, little clips? Famously, wasn't there just a clip going around with AI of Elon Musk and Donald Trump and the Bee Gees in the background staying alive?
But isn't that more of a fair use issue?
Well,
Because
that's
he's
my
not using
question.
entire songs, just the clips. So that would, I think you'd have to just go through those fair use factors and find out whether it's going to be appropriate or not. And with songs, it's wild because songs aren't that long, so there's a whole different analysis versus movies and videos. So I would think that would be the analysis here.
Okay, so that's just kind of what I was wondering. But fair use is still dangerous because it's an affirmative defense, right? Just because, yes, you can defend yourself on that doesn't necessarily stop you from being harmed, because you have to pay to go to court. You have to pay to defend yourself if they take it all away. Is that fair?
Yeah. But I think with the, because as you astutely pointed out, it being an affirmative defense, you're saying I did the thing, but I was legally allowed to do it, just like in a self-defense claim. So I think that's essentially what they're going to be fighting. They can do a hoopla and everything, but it'll just go right through the fair use factors, and they have to be careful too, because just like Achille obviously found out especially with the fair use. If it's if you find out that it's obvious satire or something, then you could be on the hook to pay their $37,000 or $40,000 worth of legal fees. So.
Yeah, it's something to be concerned about. But again, Jack White has to do the same thing the Foo Fighters did. He has to push back. I don't know if there'll ever be a lawsuit regarding this particular post. I just think that what happens is happening is someone tags him or his management company, and then he starts going, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be bad." So he has to come out and say that's BS. Again, I don't think anything's going to come out of it.
Well, and which is right. I mean, he can say it's BS and all. It's just the whole I'm suing. Da, 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 yeah.
It's all made up, guys.
Okay, now this clip I just saw. I got notified about it. This is mind blowing. I'm just going to play it outright and see what you guys think about this.
Side is wide, with both sides of the aisle believing a win for their opponent could doom the country. But the dean of Berkeley Law School argues it's not just politics, but America's founding document, the Constitution, that needs a bit of an overhaul. Joining us now is Dean Erwin Chemerinsky. His new book is titled No Democracy Lasts Forever: How the Constitution Threatens the United States. Dean Chemerinsky, thanks for being with us this morning. So how, in your view, does the Constitution that this country was built on and has been for nearly 250 years is a threat, actually, to the country?
Choices that were made in adopting the Constitution have come to haunt us. The Electoral College increasingly is choosing the president who lost the popular vote. 2 senators per state is undermining democracy. In the last session of Congress, there were 50 Democratic senators and 50 Republican senators, but the 50 Democratic senators represented 42 million people. Life tenure for Supreme Court justices is increasingly problematic. For much of American history, the tenure for Supreme Court justice was an average of 15 years. Since 1970, it's been 27 years. All right, and obviously you guys can see where he's going. This guy is relevant. He's the dean of Berkeley Law. So this is an educator who is training future lawyers. So I'm speaking to all of you lawyers, and I'm throwing it to you to say, especially the prof in the bottom right corner, what say you about your fellow educator and his thesis?
Joe, I think you're muted.
I said you, Nate.
Oh, me? Right. Oh, well, yeah. Well, I taught at law school for a couple of years. I was a professor. The deans aren't all this, they don't live in a White Castle. Sometimes they don't know what the F they're talking about. But
they should be working in a White Castle.
But I do think
a pretty well-known person. Chemerinsky's a pretty well.
Yeah, he's a well-known person. But I think I agree in part where maybe there could be some fundamental upgrades. Like, for instance, the right to vote should be enshrined in the Constitution versus this kind of patchwork that we have. Like there are certain things that I would put in, but I think what he's talking about is fundamental changes to the foundations of the government, and that's something like I don't think I would agree with those things, but I would agree with some various upgrades to the system we have now. And I think the last amendment was the amendment for the for the pay for the senators and Congress people, right? Where if they passed a pay raise in this session, they'd have to wait to next session before it interacted. So I think like some house cleaning things like that may be appropriate, because don't forget, it is 200 years old and we live in a different world than we did back then. So I think just some minor tweaks.
What amendments are for, right? Didn't they write that in there? I mean, the day one, or right after it was ratified, didn't we have a Bill of Rights? Because they were like, oh wait, we forgot a few things. So
yeah, and the reason that isn't good enough for Chemerinsky, and I haven't read his book, and I have, but just surface take here, what the left really wants here, and he's a pretty far left guy. They want to get rid of the Electoral College. They want to get rid of the Senate. They want to get rid of of what little remains of the constitutional order that was meant to prevent a tyranny of the majority.
Yes.
They despise those backstops, and that can't be done by amending the Constitution. I mean, it could be done, but going back to patchworks, as Nate was saying in terms of the right to vote, it's such a fundamental change. that it would be it really couldn't be done either through amendment or through a constitutional convention. It would require a constitutional amendment to come up with a brand new document. But I don't think anyone in this conversation here today wants any part of what would come out of that convention.
I don't think any human who actually could envision what America would look like 50 years after we would do such a thing would want any part of what would come out of that convention.
The thing that always surprises me about this is, like, we'll just take the Electoral College as an example. People say we should eliminate the Electoral College because it doesn't reflect the popular vote. I'm like, okay, but if you actually did that, if you actually changed that, it's a bit of a false premise to assume that everyone who votes the way they do now would necessarily vote the way they would under that system, or that the same people would vote, or different people would vote. Because once you change the metric, right, the preferences and even who will vote and when will change. So I don't think it necessarily follows that just because you eliminate the electoral vote that everyone would necessarily vote the same. It will change the way people vote, and they don't seem to factor that in.
I can't help but think a lot of this, it is by design. Some of the things he's complaining about are happening by design. And the starkest image that comes to mind is if you ever look at a county map of the country, it's staggering how red the county map is versus. So now you have the popular vote, which is actually in very small areas when you talk geographically of all the land, who can overwhelm all the rest of that country. Kind of like what I think is happening up north in Canada, where you have, everybody to the east is ruling over Alberta, where the majority of their money is coming from. So they just kind of use Alberta like a piggy bank and just suck everything out of them. A lot of this to me is by design, where a lot of the middle country has to have a say because they're producing the food, they're producing the farms, they're important.
But I'll push back on that, because I think most people would say the government represents the people. And so Montana, for instance, or I forget what states, it's like all these states that have less people than a block in New York. Why should they have the same as 8 million people? Why should they have the same say? Just because you have more land,
they have one representative.
Just because you have more land doesn't mean that you should have more say. And even with the one representative, like, I think that's a great example. Like, for instance, each representative in California is like 200,000 people, but if you're in Montana, it's like more. So like their representative has like more power in terms of they represent less people than California. I think one California vote is worth like 2 votes in another state.
Well, good. But even in numbers on the census,
if the government and the Constitution represents the people, then that would work, right? If 90% of the people live in these 2 places, then it should represent the people. But if it should represent the land, then you're talking about like the founding fathers, the system that we have now. And I also would just want to point out, most people, if you take out, if you say, what's it called? If you say now I'm forgetting it, the people who elect the president, the electoral college. If you say electoral college, most people will be for it. But then if you take it out and say the mechanism for the electoral college, which is to stop, which is literally against the tyranny of the majority, which is to that the people who vote actually have no say in the electoral college. Those people, no matter if your vote votes 100% for Donald Trump, the way the Constitution was originally designed, those electors can vote for whoever they want. They don't have to listen to anything that people say. Now that's changed because the Supreme Court now said states can pass laws to force the electors to vote as the popular vote. But the original thing was that these people, the Electoral College, were supposed to be the people who own land, the people, and those were the informed people to make the decision. So we're not even going to listen to the people who actually
hold
vote.
on. It was more than just being informed.
Do whatever
more
they
than
want.
informed, Nate. It's also, these are the people who had stakes. These are the people who actually own things. And I know that sounds terrible to say, but it's like there is kind of a price for membership. Like it could be argued, and this will be very controversial, but if somebody pays 0 taxes at all, and if anything actually gets stuff out of the government, is their vote worth the same as someone who is definitely paying taxes? It's
Yes.
I think a legitimate
Yes.
question.
I believe,
Well,
I believe
legally,
your vote
legally,
is not. I believe your vote is not dependent on how much you earn or what you have. It depends on your citizenship. So if you're a citizen, yes, your vote should count just like mine. One man, one vote. That's the founding principle of this country. I believe that's true. Maybe I'm just a cockeyed optimist.
I don't know
but
if it was a
yes.
founding principle of the country, because
One man,
that's
one
part of the
vote.
reason, like the Senate, we didn't vote for senators. They were appointed by the state. It was literally by design. The senator represents the state, not the people.
The one man, one vote policy is if you're going to have a vote, one man, one vote. That's what it is.
So, I mean,
I
that's
have
the
a lot
law.
of thoughts. Yeah,
That's the law, but it's a worthwhile discussion.
Yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts, but this is not my show, and I would spend 20 minutes just screaming like a lunatic if I actually started answering this question. But
Can you make it brief?
I could keep it. I keep it to like under 3 minutes, but it's not 60 seconds if I was start going off on this, because this is such an abomination, and everything we've seen from the Democratic Party about their thinking about what democracy is and the way they run their primaries, or like that 2 out of the last 3 primaries that the people who voted in there and from the party that's always screaming democracy didn't get the candidate that they voted for in running for them in the election. And these are the people who are screaming about democracy and how important it is for people to vote. What these people who are arguing against the Electoral College, and if you're unaware of it, there's something called a National Compact, which has been signed by multiple states, and the agenda behind it, which is what Sherminsky is clearly pitching for, is this concept that if there are enough states that control the Electoral College, that all sign off on this national compact, that there are a bunch of states which have committed that they are willing to say our electoral voters will not be determined by our state's individual votes, but by the popular election. And the concept being so that if it's purposefully designed to do away with the Electoral College without having any constitutional amendments, and the objective is that if there is enough states that had 270 electoral votes that sign off on this, each of these states are saying, no matter how our state votes, whatever the popular vote is, that's what we're going with. So if our state votes for the Republican and the national and the Democrat and the majority of the popular vote across the country is for the Democrats, we will say to our Republican electors who we're supposed to be sending, no, you don't get to vote. The popular vote controls here now, and we're going to hand that slate over to the Democrats. That's
how many red states are in support of this compact? Curious.
None, to the best of my knowledge.
Right.
No, I wonder why.
They move all the way, of course. Exactly. It's patently unconstitutional.
No, I disagree.
Yeah, I think it's faithless electors.
I think it's completely constitutional.
Yeah, the faithless electors.
The states shall choose their electors. They can choose it by any methodology they want.
One man, one vote. You're depriving everyone in that state of their vote. Their votes there's
no constitutional right to vote.
Do not matter anymore.
That's true.
There's no constitutional right to vote. Yeah, there's no constitutional right to vote, and the states should choose the electors. They could have a horse race and choose the electors if they want. To be honest with you,
there's a limit.
Yeah. Well, that was.
So in other words, they can also say no votes for black people, right? That would be constitutional.
They can't say no votes for black people.
That's going to violate the
15th
Amendment.
The 15th Amendment. Yeah.
Well, hold
they
on.
can say no votes at all.
An amendment, though.
Yeah.
That's the
I'm
point.
saying no votes at all. They say no votes at all for electors. They can do that. They can do that.
Yeah, I don't think the Supreme Court. You doctrinally, Nate, are 100% right, but they wouldn't let it pass because it completely frustrates it makes voting irrelevant.
But
there are limits. There are limits. Remember, the Constitution does require that a Republican form of government be in place in every state.
Yeah, but what does that mean to be a Republican?
Yeah, but whatever it means. Well, it certainly doesn't mean that if the state decided to what if they decided not to have gubernatorial elections or legislative, but to have a governor for life?
That's different than their electors, because don't forget, before George Washington, for instance, and the first 5 presidents were voted in.
I'm citing an explicit constitutional provision, though. That's the problem.
Yeah,
but I have a constitutional provision that says explicitly the states shall choose their electors. So it's up to them to choose how.
And the Supreme Court has been incredibly incredibly deferential to that.
Right.
We see
that
that
explicit constitutional language.
But I mean, having been involved in the 2020 litigation, there are limits. There are limits, and they came up largely in the civil rights context, but they're not limited to the civil rights context.
Well, hold on. Just as a point of clarification, like the first 4 or 5 presidents, there was no vote from people, right? It was all voted in by the state legislatures. They chose the electors, and so the state said no votes. We're going to do it ourselves, and then eventually it started allowing people to vote for their electors, and then we had the faithless electors, right? Because then electors were able to say we're not going to vote for what the people voted for, and then we had the faithless electors case. So right now, what I'm saying is that. So right now, I think the point is that if
keep in mind that's what they're prosecuting Donald Trump for trying to do in Georgia.
Okay.
Well, I think some of that
Michigan,
is illegitimate for exactly that reason. I think
yes,
I've commented such before. I think until the Electoral Count Reform Act, which came up afterwards because that's changed now, but at the time, I don't think there was any prohibition constitutionally from the states saying, you know what, we had a vote. But you know what? I don't think we want to do that after more. Let's get the legislature together and change our vote. I think they could have done that legally. I think they could have done that in Florida, for example, in 2000. I think that would have been a resolution to the problem. It's like, you know what? We had an election, didn't work out. State legislature is going to make a decision. We vote this way. I think that would have been legal at the time.
That would have certainly been interesting.
Yes.
I could literally make an entire 2-hour show about the conversation we've had for the last 10 minutes.
I think you will be, right?
I probably will be. But I will say this respectfully, and you know that I genuinely like and respect every person here on this panel a great deal. I'll tell you right now, respectfully, gentlemen, none of you have the first clue as to whether or not this is constitutional. And I can prove it to you. I can prove it to you. And by the time I'm done, I'll tell you have no idea. The reason you have no idea is because, as you are all well aware, far better than most of our viewers even, is that when you have an issue that has never been tested, a constitutional issue that has never been tested, you can espouse whatever theories you have as to what the law should be and which way it should fall. And you may be correct, but there's no way to know what is correct because these are interpretations that these are calls that have never been made. And the only way we actually know what the law is when it comes to Constitution is somebody tries doing something, and then that action gets challenged by a third party, and then they go to court over it, and precedent is set. So we don't know right now. You can sit here and Ron can come up with great theories as to why this is unconstitutional, and Nate and Kurt can come up with great theories as to why it is constitutional, and it's a phenomenal argument because you're basically
stream is over.
What I'm saying is you're spelling out what the arguments would be in an exceptionally well, and the audience is becoming really well informed on it. But the reality is that there's no way for any of us here to actually know what's going to be, because the way things work in the law is we don't know what the law is. When there's two logical interpretations, there's no way to know what the hell the law is until someone tries doing it, and then it gets challenged, and it works with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says this is what it is.
That's what the show is for, though. That's what we're doing here. Yeah.
And that's why it's
in the show, then, right?
No. And Joe, can I play out what you're saying though? Because even then, even after there's a decision, that doesn't mean that decision is forever. There not been overturned?
But then
it's always a conversation.
But then you could at least say this is what the law is today.
For God's
you
sake.
could say this is what the law is today. We don't know what the law is. There's no way to know what the law is today. At least if there's a decision for the Supreme Court, we could be like, all right, look, based on this holding, I can tell you what that on a First Amendment right, this is how the law works, or a Second Amendment right, this is the way the law works. This when it's an issue of first impression, you like with immunity. Okay, everyone had their thoughts about what presidential immunity was. Did it exist and not exist? I would argue that 50 years ago, every person in the country thought there was such a thing as presidential immunity, even though it never come up. And all of a sudden, there's this whole argument because they want to go after Trump that who says there's immunity? Who says there's immunity? Just because that's the practice that's been going on for 250 years, and everyone's assumed that to be true.
You got Joe started. It's all over.
Now you're going to come along and you're going to say to me that you know what it is. Well, there's no way you can say that when there's not a single case that's really remotely on point on this type of issue, you don't know the law. You can sit here giving the great legal arguments, and you guys are making very insightful legal arguments.
Why even have the show?
Yeah, Joe's like, wow.
No, what I'm saying is,
What's
your
up?
arguments are great. No, I'll tell you why. I'm going to tell you why you do that. No, the reason you do that is because it's a very interesting and it's insightful conversation as to what the argument to be. Right. But you're also framing it as this is what the law is, and all you are lying. I'm sorry, not intentionally lying, but I don't mean lying. Lying is lying is the wrong
misinformed
word.
Would be.
What I'm saying is, no, our audience will walk out of here thinking this is what the law is, and I'm simply saying,
no, wait, then they would. That would really be stupid.
This is what the law is. You say this is what we should think the law is, but frankly, we don't friggin' know. There's no way to know definitively.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, hold on.
Joe's right.
Well, what? All right, so the issue that we're talking about is the electors issue, right? And you're saying that it hasn't been, the Supreme Court hasn't said anything about how the states can elect electors. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is there's nothing definitive which tells us whether or not a state can predetermine as to its electors ignoring the will of its own state's voters.
Yes, there has been no case that says they can do that without. But so
there already are electors who have gone against even what their state has done. It's just been such a small number, nobody's done anything about it.
But not that the state is directing is going to change over who the electors are and flout the will of their own people. Which, by the way, if your governor ever signs off on such a national compact, you should get together a group of people and find that guy or gal who's sitting in that governor's mansion and basically and I'm not advocating for violence, but in theory, my heart would tell me that what I would want to see happen is that person should be dragged from their damn governor mansion, tarred, feathered, and sent to the Isle of Elba, because you've basically, all you're promising when you sign this stupid compact, all you are committing to and promising is that, hey, if my state, this won't affect my state at all if we vote with the national people, with the popular vote, but if my citizens who I'm representing decide we don't like the guy that the popular vote gave to, I'm going to tell my own citizens, F you, I'm giving the slate of electors to the people you did not vote for. That's all this compact is promising. I am taking away your decision, you people here, and giving it over to the people living
a much louder way
miles away in San Francisco. I'm giving it away to a bunch of people who you never met, whose social morals, whose values, and everything about the way they look at the world is completely different from yours. But I'm your leader. You elected me. You put me in this mansion to help you out, and I'm saying to you, go to hell, because there's some election 1,000 miles away from you that we don't even know if the election is being held properly. We have no idea whether or not they're stuffing ballots there.
You remember what you said if you got started in 20 minutes? You remember that discussion?
I'm sorry.
You remember that happened?
Joe is yelling and screaming.
Hold up. Ian has to go here in a minute, and Ian hasn't spoken for about 15 minutes. So I was
the only one who hasn't made a fool of himself.
An opportunity to get a word in before he leaves.
I don't like Erwin Sherminsky. No, I'm just kidding. To be honest, I haven't been following the intense passion exactly what logic we're going on. But the point of it is we could argue like Joe says all day long about these different arguments, but I do believe in our Constitution. I think it's the greatest document that's ever been written by humans.
Amazing.
And so I would choose to amend it, to change it over time. If you look at the clip, Erwin was just talking about a few specific issues that he has an issue with. He has a right to have those issues with, but he just has to get 2/3 of Congress to actually make that happen. So I think it's good the way it is. That's my 2 cents.
Good. Very well said. Very well said. And I think I'm going to shift.
He's the best politician.
Hold on. But before we, I just wanted to make sure we bring up at least one case, the case of the faithless electors case, because in this case they talk about everything Joe was talking about, like for the fact that electors like for a fact that electors don't have to go with the popular vote of the people. They also talk about how the right of the state to have the electors vote however they want. And then, because don't forget, this case, the part about this case was about whether the state could compel electors to vote with the popular vote, because the electors could theoretically vote for whoever they wanted. So in this case, the Supreme Court said, yes, the state can pass a law to compel electors to vote with the popular vote. But before this case happened, the electors didn't have to do it. And it goes into how the states have discretion, and the states can choose electors. So Joe, maybe this is a case that you'd want to review, because the Supreme Court seemingly does go through everything that you're talking about. And this is what we were pointing to earlier. So
wow, there we go.
Touche. Okay, you tell me you have a case that you feel is strongly on point. Great, Ron.
All right, let's go to the faithful electors case. It's right here on the screen. It goes over
and it says that they can ignore the will of their own people in that case.
It says the
nothing in the
states can
Constitution
choose.
expressly prohibits the states from
direct
taking away
them.
presidential electors' voting discretion, as Washington does. Article 2 includes only the instruction that each state appoint electors, and the 12th Amendment sets out electors' voting procedures. So yes, the states are the ones who get to choose the elect. Now they can pass a law and say we're going to do it by the popular vote, or they can say we're going to do it by a dice game. It all depends.
And by the way, my gut said that from a legal perspective, I actually agreed with you and Kurt, and not with Ron. I do think that the court would find it constitutional. I just don't think it's been determined. But Ron, if you have case law that you think supports you, and you came prepared.
Joe, I'm actually saying exactly the same thing as you, which was that the court would find a way, just as they have to say, this is not what the constitutional order.
Well, they may well do, but it wouldn't necessarily be a correct interpretation. And I've disagreed with the Supreme Court. I'm sure you have from time to time. Be like,
I
that's
have
just the
many
wrong
times,
interpretation.
100%.
Yeah, so the Supreme Court might have a ten up its
But in
ass.
this event, I would, because it is incomprehensible. Because you make a very powerful point. They could pass a law in Missouri that the governor of Missouri shall decide where all the electoral votes shall go.
Yep.
And that simply isn't gonna fly. It ain't gonna fly. And if I have to stay up, if I have to put in an all-nighter to find, to cobble together the constitutional language, and the quotation, but they're not.
If it ever comes down to it, Ron, you can take one side of this at the Supreme Court. Nate and I'll take the other. We'll see how it pans out.
I'll be backing Ron on this, by the way. Even though I think Ron is probably going to lose, I would be backing.
All right, you can join Team Ron if you want. That's fine. I'll take it alone. I don't care.
Hey, this just came in. Good news. X's lawsuit against Media Matters survived the motion to dismiss.
Yeah, that was. I think
right,
yesterday. That is great news.
That's good news.
Hell yeah. Okay, so for something that's probably a little less contentious, that I'm sure will make everybody happy, here is somebody's analysis about the interview that went down last night. And I want to see if people agree or disagree.
Well, my friends, Kamala's first interview was an utter calamity. It was also incredibly boring. I would have rather gotten a colonoscopy, but I do it for you guys. I'm a martyr. I do it for you. Now, let me start off by saying the bar is so low, it's in the 7th ring of hell. I wasn't expecting much from Kamala Harris, but I was expecting a little bit better. She's had 40 days to prepare. Kamala Harris answered those questions like she'd just been pulled over by Highway Patrol and was asked to take a breathalyzer and walk in a straight line. Like, ma'am, could you step out of the car? And she's like, my values haven't changed because they're my values. I'm going to start calling Kamala Anna Nicole Harris. The way she was talking, it was like, I've been very clear. I love fracking. I've been clear since 2020 that I stand by fracking, Dana. Kamala Harris had 40 days to prepare, and she did not give one clear, cogent, substantive answer the entire time. One thing I found incredibly ridiculous is asking Kamala Harris what she wants to do on day one. What do you want to do when you get into office? She's been vice president for almost 4 years. I also felt like Dana, whatever, was leading the witness. She was like, Kamala, did you do this because of A, B, or C? This is not the SAT multiple choice section. She's running for president of the United States. Ask her a question and let her answer. Now, Kamala Harris, she's supposed to have the best people around her with all these years of political experience, but let me tell you one mistake they made. Their biggest mistake is that they waited 40 days to do a sit-down interview. Had she been doing regular interviews, the stakes wouldn't have been that high. It wouldn't have been such a big deal. She would have developed a rapport and a cadence with all of these journalists, but instead, we're all watching now with a fine-tooth comb. Now let's talk about Mr. Jazz Hands Tim Walz. He was there next to Kamala Harris the entire time, but he did not do much better. When he was asked if he lied about IVF or his military record, he said, well, you know, my wife says I don't have the best grammar sometimes. Sir, telling bold-faced lies and then saying, well, I could have had better grammar is the most ridiculous cop-out thing I've ever heard. You clowns had 40 days to prepare, and this is the best product you could come up with. Now,
No
my most
speaking to
important
English.
question about the entire interview is this. Why are you guys sitting around a dark, dingy diner slumped over tables? Why don't you look presidential at all? Why are you not sitting down doing an official...
Anyway, he goes on, but
They look like you're in the principal's office.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense.
It's not, from what I understand, he's left wing too. He's not even.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything because I could find you left wing channels that have extremely funny things about Trump's interviews. You know, that's as much as somebody from the they're going to bash is bash. It's on the other side. So it's what he was saying is funny, and I like it. But pull up Media Matters, and they're going to destroy Trump's stuff the same way. So,
well, it could be. What I'm saying is he's not from the right. What I'm saying is that he's somebody, I believe, from the Democratic side who's trashing her.
Yeah, the
so
Lincoln
your
Project.
analogy breaks down.
The
obviously,
Project.
media matters would go find problems.
Because there are a whole bunch of Republicans that are.
That would be a better analogy. It'd be the Lincoln Project, possibly, or what have you.
So, it's you know, it is what it is. But I agree with him though. What he said was definitely on point. It was it wasn't good. It wasn't good. And I think the best point he made was they waited too long and had that one, you know, like here is the thing, and then have them sitting at the table saying, I didn't like it, and you know, it was bad.
I like how I don't know if we got to that point, but he said that the lighting and the setting was terrible. And if you're going to do a diner, why not the Waffle House, which is, you know, bright as a Chrysler Center, as he put it. It also would have felt more American.
Denny's, although you might be confused about what you ordered.
Well, I think there would be something there too. Like a Waffle House would feel very Americana, and then you could, you know, push that into your message as well. You know, if you're supposedly reaching the quote little folks, but I don't know. What I've seen of it, haven't watched the whole thing, wasn't impressed. And her story about the phone call when Biden called her, when she went into this whole narrative that, Auntie, I'm going to have pancakes. This is one of the most ludicrous things I've ever heard of. Any other commentary on it? Joe, you tend to have
Joe loved it.
No, I actually covered. I covered last night's. I tried fact checking both Trump's town hall and also Kamala's interview last night on my stream, and then following into on a locals after party. And yeah, I thought that what they did was pretty pathetic. I mean, if just looking at her facial mannerisms throughout the entire time, she looked as if everything that he described, like she had just been pulled over and she was drunk, and also that she just took an enema. Like she looked so uncomfortable, so cringe, like she's swallowing as she's answering the question, and you could see, like, you know, beads of sweat forming on her brow when she's asked questions like, "Do you believe in fracking?" Yes, I've always it's like what they just like. Are you not prepared for any of these questions? And it seems as if the answer is no. You change your mind on this. It's almost like she didn't expect Dana to be asking her anything besides like.
There was one point where she completely failed to answer a question. Oh no! It was Walz when Dan asked him.
Her. She refused to answer when Bash said about being black. No. When he said it was about whether you're black or not and running, and I was shocked. I mean, that one actually shocked me. It's like she goes, "Oh,
just say you're black."
Next question.
Right?
Why did she avoid? Why didn't she just say?
Didn't want to say it.
Obviously, you know, my father is Jamaican. She could just say, "My father is Jamaican. My mother is, Indian descent." Why are you bringing this up? What is the problem? But this whole next question, it was like, that was weird.
Yeah, no. It was the whole thing was weird. From the people who are always screaming weird, the whole thing was. It was a very unusual type of It's very weird to bring your vice president with you, sitting there with you with like your dad, like, you know,
emotional support animal.
It was everything about it was just, it was a very, very strange type of thing. And it shows you how ill prepared she is, even for just a basic sit down. I was surprised because she's a politician, for now, like 15 years? Like, how can you be this bad?
She's been doing that for a while.
How can you be
if you look at her past, no, she's done this before, like robbing the other position from the other party, swinging to the right quietly, but then never really answering. If you look at it, she's trying to not answer. She's like, I'm for fracking, but I stick to my Green New Deal at the same time. And she's trying to not get pinned down.
On the economy, you don't expect to be asked about the fact that you've been sitting in power for the last 3.5 years, and that, you know, and she was, and Dana, to her credit, actually asked her those questions. But the real thing you need to ask yourself is this: why was Dana asking her follow-up questions? When you know this is designed to be,
it was better than I expected.
Well, CNN's trying to move. CNN's trying to move right, like, because they've literally like had that like at their platform. They're trying to move.
So you seem to have a hypothesis, Joe. What do you think it was?
I do, because I have other thoughts also, which is why is along the same lines. Why is it that legacy media and so many opinion pieces are bashing the one novelty she introduced of price controls? You would think that they would save their bashing for when it might be relevant if they actually believed it and they thought it's, and they actually, which is, they haven't been telling us the truth, that price controls are basically a road towards self-destruction. They always have, everywhere they've been tried, they are a road to self-destruction. But there's no reason that the Atlantic, there's no reason that the Washington Post has to produce content which is bashing it today rather than bashing it in December, so that she wouldn't, if they really were concerned about it, why would they be bashing it today? And I've actually been developing a theory about this, which is,
I have a theory.
Before you go to the theory, just want to make so is her policy price controls or price gouging? Because, like, for instance, here in Texas, they have many laws against price gouging. Like, matter of fact, they're prosecuting a whole bunch of gas stations now, because when hurricane came through, the gas went from like $3 to $5, and they're like, oh, you're price gouging. Right, but I wouldn't call that price controls, and a lot of these ruby red states have these anti-price gouging laws. Now, it seems to me she was trying to move to the federal level, but I'm not sure if it's like Texas's proposal. But we have price gouging laws here in Texas.
She's not going to give you such a. She barely came up with this policy. You think she's going to break it down even further for you?
No, I'm asking. You know, is it price controls, or because the way
she said price controls,
price gouging, but I don't know.
She said set price controls to stop price gouging. That's what she basically. That's what she's saying, and that's what these articles were bashing. And it doesn't make sense that they would be bashing it now before the election.
I think there is a reason, and I've got to go back to my interview that I did with Zach Voorhees. If it kills them, part of the reason I asked, why is Silicon Valley suddenly in and pro-Trump out of nowhere, right? Because they've always been hating Trump, but lately they've been turning to him. Not only Peter Thiel, but many others, other than Reid Hoffman. He's noteworthy for always going to be left. And Voorhees pointed out that there's some legislation going down with the Democrats, which will take away the tax incentive of startups, and things are going on now. And I'll try to express it as well as he did, but essentially, like, if you're a company, right, you're running a startup and you get $100,000 worth of investment, and you put $100,000 of that investment into the company for R&D, et cetera, you pay zero in taxes. They're shifting it, and the Democrats are behind this, saying, no. You will pay taxes on that $100,000 coming in, and that will kill the whole startup environment of Silicon Valley. And that is the real reason that quietly they've been going behind. Now, I'm saying that this
right. It's self-interest. It's
always self-interest, in my opinion. So right. Atlantic, New York Times, all these others, these price controls could potentially affect them. I don't know exactly how yet, but I'm going to assume that it will burn them. It will tear them down and get them out of business.
Here's the problem with your theory. Eric, because it doesn't really answer fully the question I asked, which is, why say it now? Why not wait till December after the election? And
because you want to shift that policy. You got to make sure.
But
That
the
no,
policy's
no.
not
Something.
here. She's just spouting off. She's also spouting off that she's in favor of fracking.
No.
Yeah,
You kill it
fracking,
at the pass. This is a warning. If that is that dangerous to them, this is literally telling her you back off that shit now, because because she could go through with it. They're pushing.
I think, as someone who watches Media Matters, Fox News, the extreme right and extreme left, from my perspective, what Kamala is doing is saying, I got the extreme left, right? I got everybody who's for the Green New Deal, everybody for all that stuff. I got them. They're going to vote for me no matter what. So I can come out and move a little bit and say, hey, you know what? Fracking is not as bad. You know what? With the border, I said, let's decriminalize the border. Now we got to get tough on the border. Why? Because those people who are going to vote, those people who she tried to placate in the prime, she need to placate in the prime. She doesn't need to do that. She now needs to get those people like me in the middle who could vote either way and say, hey, I want to be more reasonable. Now, I think it's interesting that all her reasonable positions have been long-standing Trump positions. I think that's fascinating because it's like, all right, we got one guy who's been saying this all along, and now you've come to that position. So I think if people really were thinking about it, you would say, well, hold on, let's get the candidate who's already been thinking like this. But I think that's the plan for the Democrats. Let me move more to the center. Let me say all these nice little Republican things and get those independent voters to vote for me and get into the White House. She doesn't believe in fracking and all that.
Well, of course,
she's lying to us.
That's a different conversation.
But
that's a different topic, Nate.
Trump made that joke about giving her a red MAGA hat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, he also said she hasn't she hasn't put out her policies yet because she's waiting for me.
She stole his policy on tips. She literally is stealing his policies. You know what? I like that.
She even said the wall too. The wall.
The child credits. Trump says he'll give you 5,000. I'll give you 6,000. Let's have an auction war here on how much the child credits are going to. I mean, it's kind of a joke. I mean, the theory that I have, and also you see Gavin Newsom talking about how he was in an interview, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, where he basically kind of displayed that he's being controlled and not too happy with the fact that Kamala's in here. And I think that might be the answer to everything.
Oh, well, for sure.
Well, when I say that might be the answer to everything, Actual Justice Warrior is a guy who I've had on my show. Is a smart guy. He did a video last night talking about Gavin Newsom, and I think that he actually expressed something that I thought that's
how you feeling about the
right
switch?
Here.
I mean, the switch. Now we went through a very open process, and a very inclusive process. It was bottom up. I don't know if you know that. Yes, that's what I've been told to say.
Yes, it was.
That's what I'm told to say.
Primary, I believe that's what they called it.
It's a very, very fast blitz.
I think it was
a blink primary. So we call that.
A 30-minute convention. Between a tweet and another tweet.
It's amazing how it happened.
Yeah, it's been amazing. But what is amazing is how unified everybody is.
Anyway,
So
100% on that. Well, and Gavin Newsom is going to knife her. They've got a long history. I've been reading, the book Amateur Hour about, the back forth. Remember, Biden literally named Gavin Newsom his successor.
And all of a sudden now, you have to realize that his term ends, and it's his second term, so he can't run again. His term ends in 2026. Yep. If Kamala wins, she's obviously the candidate in 2028, which means that it means his career as a politician is over unless he goes and becomes, a senator, or he gets some new
Schiff's
political
already going to
thing.
get that seat. So
he was perfectly primed to run in 2028, which means if you're Gavin Newsom, you've built your whole career towards becoming president, the worst thing in the world for you is Kamala winning this election.
Of course.
You don't want her winning this election, but you certainly can't go out there and publicly kibosh her. So you basically behind the scenes, you want her to lose. And I'm sure he's got a lot of support. His aunt is Nancy Pelosi. Like literally, his aunt is Nancy Pelosi.
He's the heir of the Getty fortune.
Yeah, so he's got a lot of money and a lot of political clout, and he's been building his entire life story towards finishing in the White House. And there's no question. He even had a debate with DeSantis, who at the time he thought was going to be the nominee to strut his stuff. Yes, on Fox News, to strut his stuff that he's the right Democratic nominee. And I'm telling you right now, that's everything that what we're seeing here are the glimpses of the friction within the Democratic Party, where I think that there's a significant wing there, which is actually trying to hand the election to Trump. And I think that's why you see, I think it's the Gavin Newsom's, and you can argue with me, Ron, and I'd love to hear your take on it. But
I completely get why you would say this, Joe. But finish your sentence.
My thought is that when we see these articles bashing her policies and at a time before the election rather than waiting until after the election, and we're seeing the media asking her follow-up questions, which they know she has no chance of answering, when they shouldn't be asking her these questions if they're looking to have her win, which is what we know they all want. They all should be wanting her to win, is that maybe a significant percentage of them don't actually really want her to win. And I think that that's what we could be seeing here. But if you disagree with me,
we have never Trumpers. They have no, there's never Trumpers. Why not never Kamalas?
I mean, it might not be even a never Kamala so much as no, we really, really want Gavin, and she's in the way.
Joe, there's so many points where pundits were saying that was going to happen. It's too late for that to happen now. They can't get him. They can't get him onto the ballot.
No, they don't want to get him on the ballot.
No. 2028.
What I'm saying is that they're
writing off this election.
That's what I'm saying. That they're
I think
writing
some of them
off.
are.
I think some of them are writing off this election. They say, you know what?
I think a lot of donors are.
I think he only has one term left in him, and that's, you know, if they can basically have some sort of calamity befall America in 2028 to basically make it look like we got to get rid of the Republicans, get change, and have a rebuilding season, have him come in there against a brand new candidate who's never been able to show. And he'll come in there as the hero during some time of crisis, which will be manufactured in 2028. And I would be very scared about how 2028 is going to go. But and to basically say, you see, this is what happens when we have a Republican in there. And the focus will not be about Trump anymore. The focus will be about how Republicans are terrible in their leadership. And here comes our new white knight, you know, and it gives him the perfect timing from 2026 to basically announce his election 6 months after he steps out of office, that I'm running for power, I'm running for president, and spend a year and a half campaigning for the job. That's how this smells to me, that Nancy Pelosi and the conservative wing of the Democratic Party is possibly actually intentionally tossing this election away.
Well, that is very, very possible, Joe, because one, the fact that she's even the candidate is suspect. And the reason why I say that is, if you think back to that Sunday 5-6 weeks ago, Joe Biden wrote a letter somehow and he put it on Twitter versus like, you know, Lynn LBJ, who did a 40-minute, you know, address to the television cameras. He wrote a letter, put it on Twitter. In that letter, he thanked her for being vice president, but explicitly did not name her as a successor. And then, and Gavin Newsom just said it too. He goes, what, 30 minutes? So all of a sudden, then a new tweet came out saying, by the way, I'm endorsing Kamala. I have been saying ever since that day that Biden's social media team was infiltrated or working with or whatever. They dropped that second tweet or post, forcing the hand, because what is he going to do? Unendorse her? He's going to say, "Oh, I really don't want my vice president." And this is relevant too, because the second he lost the debate, I don't know if you guys remember that with Trump. I think everybody would agree he lost the debate. Okay, you can question Trump's performance, but Biden was awful.
Yes.
What was trending? Gavin Newsom. Then Gretchen Whitmer. This conversation. Everybody was talking about Gavin Newsom or somebody else being a nominee. Then they got to Kamala like 5th, 6th down the line. She was always late in the conversation. She is not liked by the party. They may have been doing a coronation now. They might love her today, but believe me, you can find many, many articles mocking the shit out of her from the left. And I mean, like general Democrats. And then now, like there's a Daily Show piece that was quite hilarious about this yoga guru and how this yoga guru was teaching Kamala how to say, you know, do word salad. This is the Daily Show. The Daily Show is not pro-Trump, folks. I promise you they're not pro-Trump. So yes, I do think that happened. I think things got screwed up, and now you have a split in there because They had to coalesce around her. I don't think anybody really is that thrilled with her. There's a reason she was picked as VP. Now, one of it could be saying a diversity hire, but I would say the other part was she was impeachment insurance, because nobody wanted Kamala instead of Joe Biden. And I think it's still the case.
Yep.
Well, I my fear is that we are underselling her ability to win, because I just don't want people to wake up on the day after election day. It's like, oh my God, we've been going down the street. People need to stay energized. People need to go out there and vote.
The predicted markets right now are favoring her 55-45.
Do not take this lightly. It's wild, because here in Texas, like when I moved to Texas, I made the affirmative choice to vote up and down red. And the reason why I vote up and down red is because I moved from a blue state where it's shit and I hate their shit policies. So why am I going to take my blue vote and bring it here and make it a blue vote and mess it up here? I like it red, so I'm going to vote red, even though I don't agree with all the red stuff. So I think we need to stay vigilant in terms of get out there and vote, stay positive, but do not take this lightly. Do not take this lightly.
Oh, I'm not saying that at all, Nate, by the way. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that there's a split in there, and I think that everybody should do what they can to use it and exploit it. Because everything else is being exploited going the other way. So just because I'm saying that there are problems, it's like, yes, there are. I think there are problems there, and they need to focus on. They need to push it and use it, and everything else. The Bobby Kennedy endorsement, people are like, oh yeah, it's not that big of a deal. Well, it does help, and it helps in ways people don't understand. Anybody who is going to vote Democrat probably would not be jumping for Bobby Kennedy. They don't like him at all. They actually Democrats hate Bobby Kennedy more than Trump. However, a lot of independents do like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. A lot of them. And I think he helps a segment feel more comfortable with Trump, especially being in there. The Tulsi Gabbard, same situation. So yep. I don't know. But yeah, Nate, you're right. But also, Nate, it's great that you're voting up and down red, because that's what the state traditionally is. But believe me, there are plenty of idiots from California who are coming in to overwhelm and swamp your vote.
Up to like 3 or 4 points in the state. Matter of fact, people don't know how close it's gotten in Texas. It's gotten so bad. Ted Cruz, who never runs ads, has started running ads because his race is getting closer, which is insane in Texas. So yeah.
He's had that before, though. He had that before, Nate.
He had that with Beto, but this guy's no Beto, and he was leading huge before. Now all of a sudden, after Kamala got in, it tightened up really tight. It just got real tight all of a sudden. So he's running his ads, which he's like a weaselly little scumbag. But you know, I don't want to change anything here. So even though I know a lot of my New York friends who have moved down here got their blue tickets and they're voting the other way. So
we keep hearing Texas is going to flip. I don't.
I'm not saying it's going to flip. I'm just saying it's close. I don't believe it's going to flip.
Joe, it can happen. Virginia was reliably red, and now it's blue.
Fair.
And if you lose Texas, if the Republicans lose Texas, that's it. That's
game over.
Yeah, that's game over.
100% true.
The only thing worse would be losing Florida.
Yeah, and that's game over too. If you lose Florida, it's game over.
Florida is moving more reliably red these days. So
fortunately, and Ohio too. Ohio was almost purple, but now Ohio's become pretty solid. Ohio and Virginia almost switched spots, because Ohio was pretty close to blue, if I recall, or much more purple in Virginia. Anyway, it's weird.
I think both sides are always saying, like, maybe we'll flip this state, like, you know, when it's so traditional, it just seems like it's like you're gonna bet on Minnesota flipping red for the first time in 40 years. I mean,
it happened with Michigan. It happened in 2016. Michigan, Wisconsin, and
Michigan didn't just flip. Michigan is deep blue right now, and they made their elections almost impossible.
It flipped in 2016. Remember, it hadn't voted red in like what, almost a generation, and then all of a sudden he took 3. They called the blue wall of the Rust Belt, the blue wall, and he took all 3 of those states.
And by the way, he's looking good in Pennsylvania at the moment, I think. Michigan is shakier, but Michigan's scared, you can tell, because they're trying to keep Cornell off the ballot and keep Bobby Kennedy on the ballot. anything to weigh it out, because Kamala is more vulnerable in Michigan than people realize, mostly because the anti-Israeli stance by a big chunk of the population in Michigan.
But their message in Michigan is, their message to them is, who do you think is going to be better? Is it going to be Trump or us? Because Trump is even more pro-Israel than that. So I even though I think, yes, she's more vulnerable because of the issue, I think at the end of the day, those people have no choice but to go home to Kamala, because Trump is he's got an Israeli flag on his chest. You know what I'm saying? Yep. I don't think you have any argument with Trump. I think you can maybe have some argument. If you want to at least sit at the table, you get Kamala in there. But if you don't,
I'm going to bail.
Can you just
Thanks
give me,
for having me
before you go, can you just give me feedback on my comment? Because you seem to disagree with me, and I'd like to hear like why you think I'm wrong in my read on the Democratic Party.
Because I think at the end of the day, it is still an existential. The election of Trump is an existential threat.
I don't think they believe that.
I do think so. I absolutely do.
They absolutely believe that. Yes, they do.
The public thinks that. You think the elitists at top of Democratic Party really believe that?
More so.
They're more threatened.
They are absolutely terrified of it. And I'll tell you something else, Joe. The reason they selected and installed Joe Biden as president was because he's what you and I would call a golem. He's a zombie. He turned out to be more of a zombie and they thought they could get him over the finish line for 8 years of zombie presidency. His lack of principle and lack of acuity was exactly what they wanted, so that they would run. It would be a shadow presidency. They learned last time that you don't have to leave the basement to win the election.
Well, what can we do? That's fair.
So why not have another basement election? What could go wrong? And then she's not going to really push back a lot on
anything.
What they tell her to do.
She has no spine.
Right. She just is going to enjoy the ride. And they want. So I think that they do want her to win. They do fear Trump. And I do have to go.
Well, it's a big thing.
It's
There's different things, though. I think that is where it gets confusing.
I think that's a good point too. I think you're both making good points.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to be wrapping up anyway. Kurt, what do you have coming up?
Yeah, so we're doing a more video on demand format recently on my channel. So we got some cool stuff coming out. We got a video coming out about Girardi and his guilty plea coming out. We got a video coming out about the Phoenix Police Department. Recently, the DOJ just released a huge report on Phoenix PD, basically saying they're violating people's rights in 5 different ways. So I chose to focus on the First Amendment issues, retaliation arrests for just filming police, and retaliation arrests for protests, that kind of thing. So covering that issue. And then, of course, I'll be doing an edited video on the Farwell case that is now developing with a police officer who was just charged by the feds for murdering a girl that he seduced when she was 15, and then things got worse from there. So I'm covering that story, plus I'm going to be doing one on the Zuckerberg thing coming up, so make sure to check out that stuff on my channel on civil law.
All right, Joe, what do you have going on? Okay.
I'm good logic. I'm kind of like the Gus Walls of this panel over here. They sort of silence me, except when they want the emotional me to come out. They want me to come out screaming, and then they're like, "All right, let's come back to Joe now." So, and if you want that for a couple hours a night, it's probably you probably should check it out. Good Logic on Locals, on Rumble, on YouTube. It's basically Good Logic.
Okay, Nate, what do you
just
have
call
going
me Gus?
Well, because of the
and then Eric yanks my hand and it's like, stop it. I'm like, oh, sorry, Dad. And
oh my God. This is my elder talking to me here.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Nate. Go ahead.
That's cool. No, because of overwhelming interest in it and all the messages I've been getting about it, I'm going to cover the Aaron Imholt arrest and that situation that happens, because I think he's a scumbag from what he did. But I think it's fair, if we're going to cover one side, we should also cover that. So I have been listening to you guys. So yes, I'm going to cover that, even though I've was reluctant to do it, but I'm definitely going to do it. Also, I think I have some other stories. Like I have the story that just came out with the woman who was found dead at the office. Thank you, Uncivil, who sent it to me. Woman found dead in the office, and they didn't find her she was at her desk, and they left her there for 4 days. So she fell out. She fell out on her desk and was dead. And people just walking around her for 4 days, and nobody realized she was dead. So
No
that
way.
happened. Yeah. But actually,
it was over a weekend, Nate. I did see that.
It started on Friday. Then you had Saturday, Sunday. Then you had Monday all day, and then Tuesday after the boss sent email to her, they're like, "Hey, can you do this?" And she didn't respond. Then they sent somebody down there to see if she got the email, and they found out that she was dead.
And people in the office were like, "Wow, Shirley smells worse than usual."
Matter of fact, they had complained about there was a smell, and they thought it was the plumbing or something. So yeah, so the body was even decomposing. It had been there for but this actually happened multiple times, because this actually happened in this happened actually a lot more frequently. There's a whole bunch of cases where people like the record is 5 days, where somebody was actually at their desk for 5 days dead, and they didn't know. And this was during the weekend and over a weekend. So this is pretty frequent. And just trying to cover some other interesting stories that I hope people will like. So, NateTheLawyer.com or Nate the Lawyer on YouTube. Boom.
Cool. I'm gonna go one more time and pimp my new channel out. Really is doing well. Thank you so much. It's actually crossed 3,000 subscribers in 2 weeks since I announced it, and the response has been wonderful. Just released a video on the Zuckerberg letter and what's going on there, drawing parallels with Twitter files, Bobby Kennedy Jr. lawsuit. Before that was Operation Mockingbird, so they tie together. Tomorrow will be Operation Northwoods coming out. If you guys are interested in the United States and false flag operations to try to get us in war with Cuba, all the great things that we tend to have done in history. And then on Labor Day, I'll be releasing the most important video I think I have done, Operation Acoustic Kitty. Because yes, I like cat videos. I like conspiracies. I like the CIA. So what could be better than a video about the CIA using cats to spy on the Soviets? So I hope you guys consider checking that out. I really appreciate the support. I've been having a lot of fun with the channel, and so far people are digging it. And of course, this channel here every Friday at noon. Look at, the amazing people just on this panel, going in, going out. It's a wonderful, wonderful show. I'm so honored to have all these people, even Joe. And I deeply appreciate if you consider subscribing, sharing with a friend.
Dad. I love you, Dad.